So what about assessing the response? And, you know, this is what we do, isn't it? We provide sometimes extreme training stimuli to cause that internal disturbance and ultimately get an adaptation. But it's pretty valuable if we can assess the response. And as you saw from the work of Christy, a lot of people are currently taking the approach to measure the response to training. So what are the characteristics, I think, based on the research and what I'm seeing out there that could be important in assessing this? Well, to me, does the measure make theoretical sense? There has to be some link to some theoretical mechanism that justifies the use of the variable. And I'll go through examples of each of these in a second. Equally, does the measure work practically? It's fine if it makes theoretical sense, but if it's a lab-based test, that's pretty useless to most of us who want to work in the field and get a pretty instant value to make our training decisions on. And included in the question about does the measure work practically, does it change by a meaningful margin following a training or match? And by a meaningful margin, the change needs to exceed the innate error in the test. So the signal needs to be greater than the noise. And I know a lot of people are probably sitting there saying, that's not really my cup of tea. But the fact is, to make a call on whether someone has had a negative response to the training or competition stress, you need to understand that concept in some detail. And then, as I've said, is the degree of change impacted by different levels of external load? So I think that one exists in two directions. So the external load measure that occurs at a different level should have a different response in the measure, and then the measure that you're using after the competition or training should actually be able to detect that. So if it only responds to the same degree, regardless of the external load, it's questionable in terms of how sensitive it is. And then, really importantly, does a change in the measure impact subsequent performance or injury? Because again, if it doesn't, if it just changes, but there's no performance outcome, you might want to question why you'd bother to measure it, because it just does something that doesn't actually impact the system or the subsequent performance. This is a real key one for me.